Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this very interesting knife right here. This is the Chris Reeve Knives Large Inkosi. First off, though, I want to thank my buddies over at Hellacious Blades over in York, South Carolina. They helped me out a lot, actually, and made this guy possible, so thank you very much for that, Hellacious Blades. Next thing, size comparison. This is actually a reasonably large size knife. Here it is against, of course, your Spyderco Delica, your Ontario Rat number 2, and your rat number 1 up here. Whoa there, sorry. Hit the camera with the baseball cap there. Rat number 1 and rat number 2. So you can see that size-wise, it's actually slightly longer than the rat 1, which is some serious business there. Here it is against the Spyderco Sleesh Bowie, which is a very interesting piece, and in many ways sorts of scratches this sort of titanium frame locky itch for me. And then here it is against the Spyderco Spidey Chef. I don't actually have a Sebenza, because like I said, I got those guys, but at the same time, this is another one that I think you might want to consider if you're looking for this kind of a territory. But anyways, there you go. Next thing, I have already reviewed the knife that was the immediate precursor to this guy. I reviewed the Sebenza 25, which then became the large Inkosi, and in my review of the 25, I said something along the lines of, there's now the large Inkosi, but they haven't really changed anything that meaningful, so this review still holds. Actually, that turned out not to be super true. And a couple of people said, you know, Nick, you might want to give it a shot, and so I did, and I want to thank my patrons very much for giving me the chance to just buy something and give it a shot. And then finally, this is going to be, a lot of this review is going to be in reference to the 25. Talking about the improvements there as well as in reference to the 21. So you might consider watching that review, although I'm hoping I'll cover everything you need to know here. So anyways, let's talk about what's good, what's great, what's bad, and what's ugly about the Chris Reeve Knives Large Inkosi right over here. So first off, on the good side, there are a lot of things that are still good about it comparing it to the 25. I mean, it is still made in the USA. It is still very nicely staying in the hand, partly because of the finger grooves, partly because of the finish. It still has a great warranty. They still offer spa treatments to bring this guy back to health, blast the handle, everything like that. Disassembly is still A-okay, and they still include tools and Loctite and everything. That is great. That's one of the things that makes me love Chris Reeve Knives, is because they're willing to not only design their products for easy disassembly, but to put their money where their mouth is and provide people with the easy means to do it. That's great. The clip on this guy is great, and it's actually slightly improved. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but it still lacks a lanyard hole, although you can very easily put a lanyard around this back pin here, no problem. It is still lacking that alignment hole on the front of the Sebenza. Some people would say it's, you know, a beauty mark like that was Cindy Crawford or whatever. To me, it never did it for me, anything. It's still using the ceramic detent ball and lock face. That's what makes this guy look like it has a very late lockup, even though it's right about 50% perfection-wise. But that means there's no lock stick and reduced lock wear, so no argument there. And it is still a knife that is built like a Sebenza in a lot of ways. It's very, very durable. It's built to last. It's on phosphor bronze washes. It is overall a really, really nice knife, and so there's a lot of joy on this guy, maybe even more built to last than the 25 was. And so there's a lot of really good stuff here that's left over from the 25. But there are some improvements, definitely. The pocket clip has been shifted a little bit, both to give the knife a little bit more cant in the pocket, kind of how it hangs in the pocket is now a little bit better, but it's also a little bit more ergonomic. The clip was a serious hot spot for me previously, and now it really isn't. I mean, yeah, you can feel there's a clip on there. It might be a little better without it, but it's not a big issue for me. And so I like that very much. I'm also a big fan of the fact that the grind on this guy is just a little bit better than on the 25. I mean, take a look at the thinness behind the edge here. That's really nice. This has a very thin grind, even though the blade stock is relatively thick, and so I'm really happy about that. And they also fixed a bunch of the little issues that I complained about with the 25. Things like the unergonomic clip, but now the stop pin is now a floating pin rather than the rotating one that you saw in the 25, which required it to be in the proper position, etc., in order to properly reassemble a knife. It made it very easy if this was poorly rotated that, you know, your knife wouldn't open or wouldn't close. It's certainly just that wasn't a great approach. The washers no longer have weird little tabs in them, and instead just use the stop pin itself for alignment, which is great. This construction on the whole is actually much simpler. It's a two screw disassembly. I think this is a better made knife in terms of not like tolerances and stuff like that, but it's just the design of it is simpler, and it's a simple thing done. done well, and I like that very much. And so the fixing of those little issues, although all of them were relatively little but relatively ugly things, fixing those really freed this up to be better. And finally, I think that this is actually a simpler knife now to disassemble and maintain than the Sebenza is. The Sebenza is a very easy knife, but at the same time, there you have the possibility of pinching the washes, whereas on this guy, that is just not a factor here. And so that makes this guy, frankly, one of the easiest knives to maintain freaking ever. And I like that very much. So to me, all that's the good, is that it is now simpler to disassemble than the Sebenza. They fixed a bunch of little issues, making this a much better knife. The grind is a little bit better. It's probably a little more ergonomic due to the pocket clip change position. And it's still durable, still with the ceramic detent, still with a bunch of, well, it's not having holes where it doesn't need them to be, which is good. There's still a great warranty with disassembly, spot treatment, still made in the USA, and it's still absolutely a great knife for the Vaseline factory. What's great to me still is the fact that this pivot is fully adjustable. What I mean by that is, and this is the main difference from the Sebenza 21 that I'll talk about over and over again, but by tuning the tightness of this pivot here and then putting it in place with some Loctite, which they include, you can really choose your own adventure here. I have this guy dialed in for a relatively loose pivot, not like blade play loose, but just allows me to flick this guy pretty readily with just a little bit of wrist on there, and it also makes it incredibly smooth to open and close. And the way that I'm running it with some 85 weight nano oil rather than the grease provided just makes this guy a very, very flicky sort of thing, and I like that very much, and as it wears in further, I think it'll only get better in that way. But you can also tune this so that it has something more close to a classic Sebenza sort of glass-on-glass rotation action. I mean, this guy is not far from that. It's still incredibly smooth, but I like the fact that you can adjust that you can make this knife have the action you want versus the Sebenza, which is really sort of a one-size-fits-all, you better like the Sebenza hydraulic action, you're not going to have a great time. And so to me, that remains what's great here, and it remains from the 25. Having that pivot there and allowing it to be adjustable makes this a Sebenza, because let's be real here, genetically, yeah, that is just going to be more accessible to people with a wider variety of preferences as to how their knife works. That's the great. On the bad side, there is still some leftover issues. It is still just over 3.5 inches in terms of your blade length here. We are coming in, how's the way to do this with the thumb stud? There we go. You're coming in right over 3.5 inches. That basically means that for no damn good reason, because, you know, I'm sorry, like 0.2 inches is not winning anybody much of anything. You've suddenly gone from being not an issue to a felony in a bunch of states. Guys, just keep it under 3.5 and just go for it. 3.7, whatever. So that's not great. It still has the very sharp Chris Reeve thumb studs, ambidextrous on this guy. And Chris Reeve still tends to run their S35 a little bit more soft for sharpenability as opposed to some other brands that are really pushing the envelope there. I'm still not a huge fan of the blasting on the handles because it does definitely pick up wear and snail trails. It's not bad on this guy, even with about a week and change of carry in this. I carry this guy a fair amount, actually, at least for me. That's what counts as a fair amount because I'm trying to do that a little bit more. But that texture is definitely going to pick up wear over time. And it is still less ergonomic for me than the 21. I mean, the clip has improved it substantially, but the finger grooves still leave me feeling like I'm a little further away from the blade than I want to be, and these finger grooves aren't exactly sized for my relatively small fingers. So, yeah, that's still an issue. There are some things that are that remain an issue, but actually a little bit less so. One of the rare things that's happened in a follow-up is for something to move from ugly to bad, and this is actually a case of that. In the original, the 25 review, I talked about the 25 being more fiddly, and I called that ugly, and it really was, because it had the weird things like the rotating stop pin that could block the action. It had the tabs on the washers that could cause all kinds of trouble. It had a bunch of issues that really didn't make it. But, you know, this has a lot less of those issues, but it is still absolutely 100% more fiddly. The Sebenza 21 is, you just turn the pivot until it's tight, and then the knife is perfect. Whereas this guy, you really do have to dial it in. And if you're not as familiar with, for instance, knife maintenance, takedown, those kinds of things, that's going to be something that's maybe less intuitive to you, and you could end up with a knife that's way over tight or way over loose, whereas in the Sebenza, that's not a thing. I don't think it's ugly anymore, though. Now that those sorts of silly things that they just needed to fix are fixed, well, you know, yeah, it's more fiddly, but that's also more customizable. It's kind of saying the same thing, and so I can't rightly call it ugly and great at the same time, and so I'm just going to put it out there. It's more fiddly, but I think that's okay. The other thing that has changed, unfortunately, on the bad side since I filmed the 21 review is I railed in the 25 review, that is. I railed in the 25 review that the 25 was more expensive than the large Sebenza, which is one of the best knives that has been made. It's an iconic piece, and it just bugged the crap out of me that that the 25 was more expensive than it was. They are now the same price, which is great. But unfortunately, they're both more expensive. What they've done is they've raised the price on both of these guys from $445 to $450, and then on the original from $410 to $450. Guys, no. This is like some evil genie stuff that you would do. Like, oh, I want to lose weight. Okay, and the genie hacks off your leg. I want these to be the same price. Okay, and they raise the price on both. No, that's not how that should have gone. And so it bugs me a little bit that the price went up on this guy when in reality they're simplifying the knife more than anything. I get that there are small price increases just inevitably, but Chris Reeve is already really pushing it in terms of pricing, and that jump was not great. So although they are now the same price, the large Sebenza and the large Inkosi, no, not like this. So that to me is what's bad here, is that they're the same price, but it's just really expensive. The large Inkosi is still more fiddly, although that also means more customizable. And then it still has a lot of the other little issues, like it's just not as ergonomic. The pivot is free spinning still. That still bugs the crap out of me, by the way. They're still more limited in options than the 21. I'm still not a fan of the blasting, and, the thumb studs and the just being over 3.5 isn't doing it for me. On the ugly front, actually, with the fiddliness under control here, there's nothing that I would really call ugly about this knife. Yeah, there are some things I disagree with, and ergonomically, the finger grooves aren't doing it for me, but none of that, those are just things I disagree with. None of it's just like, that's wrong. And so, short of that price spike, guys, you're killing me. But I guess I did wish for it. So anyways, there's nothing super ugly here. And so we can just go to the final conclusion, which is that I'm actually a little bit surprised, and I'm very glad I picked one of these guys up. When I did my 25 review, I was pretty negative about it. And it was not like, oh my God, this is terrible. I said over and over again, it's fine. It's an okay knife. But they had a bunch of little issues there. And this knife here, the large Inkosi, that is a case study in how a little bit of iteration and improvement can turn a fine knife, an okay knife, into a really great one. Because, it went from ho-hum, but the large, the 25, that is, felt like it was, different from the Sebenza 21, but it just also felt worse. I mean, it was flawed in a couple of places. That stop pin thing was just, that was bad. It was ugly in a few places. The action on it is less unique and remains less unique. This guy functions a lot more like every other frame lock you'll ever deal with, relative to the 21 that's a little bit more unique. It was more expensive, and honestly, it left me feel like, although the 25 had some virtues in the adjustability and things like that, it was just a step down from the 21. It was absolutely a lesser knife in my estimation. But after spending some time with the large Inkosi here, I feel like this is actually a knife that is different from the 21 still, absolutely 100%. These have different target markets, and on Instagram, it was really funny all throughout the week, watching people go back and forth. No, 21's better. No, the large Inkosi. No, 21. And back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And it's kind of a matter of taste at this point because, like I said, I think they're different, but about as good. The main difference, of course, is that pivot there. If you want to customize it or get an action that's more like a kind of a mainstream flicky sort of knife, the 25 is your way to go. Frankly, it's the only way to go. I'm sorry, the large Inkosi, that is the way to go. Don't buy a 25. Just no. Case closed. But if you want something that's, that perfect Chris Reeve smoothness every damn time, then you want a Sebenza 21. And frankly, you get a little bit more history there as well. But particularly now that you can get the Inkosi blade, the Insingo blade in the large Inkosi, which was one of the things I bemoaned last time, that you just don't have as many options with the 25, which you do now with the large Inkosi. Frankly, there's a lot of similarity there. And so this is mostly now about that pivot. I mean, there's style differences, certainly. There are ergonomic differences. And, of course, the legacy of the Sebenza, but by and large, it's going to be a matter of personal taste for a lot of people. Sure, it's a knife that still does have some frustrations. I'll freely admit that. With the thumb studs being a little bit sharp, with the free spinning pivot being there, and with it getting more expensive rather than less, And I still do wish that they made a smaller one of these. Coming in over 3.5 is not great, but even And frankly, it just feels, to me at least, a little bit big. That's, mind you, my own bias. I tend to like smaller knives. And I hear what a bunch of people are yelling at the screen, but Nick, they make the small Inkosi. Yeah, but it's bad. I had one in the hand, and it had the ergonomics of a condom full of Legos. I mean, it was really, really unfortunate for me in that way, and so it's just not even an option. What I want here is like the medium Inkosi, is something like that. And people have been asking for a medium Sebenza for years. They haven't got that. So, but I'd love to see something where this is dialed back just a little bit, but without the ergos that really killed a small one for me. But overall, I have to say, this is a really nice knife. Carrying this guy for the time I did, it was just like, yeah, this is a good tool. 100%. And it doesn't have those stupid things. It's like, oh, man, what did they do? And so ultimately, I really do feel like this is now finally up to parity, at least in terms of quality, with the 21. It's a very different knife, but it's also just as good. And although, I'll be honest with you, it's not a knife that I want to keep around. It's not making my heart sing a passionate song. I have other frame locks that I frankly like a little bit more than this guy on a regular basis, but at the same time, even if my heart's not singing a song, my mind is telling me that this is a gem. This is a very, very nicely done knife with a whole bunch of good stuff going for it, and I could very easily recommend that to somebody who wanted what's going on here. So if you've always wanted a Chris Reeve, but you want to do it your way with the customization and whatnot, I think you should tuck one of these guys in cozy with the rest of your knife collection. Huh? That one was really bad. Anyways, I hope this has been interesting to you, that this review is chief, because Inkosi means chief, among your purchasing decision-making tools, and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.